He grabbed her jacket in anger. Seconds later, her hidden tattoo stunned everyone on base. The morning of October 14, 2019, started quietly at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The sun had barely risen above the tree line when the first soldiers appeared on the base, lacing up boots, pulling on jackets, and heading toward the motor pool yard. The air was cold and sharp. Coffee steam floated out of the mess hall. Birds moved in small groups over the rooftops. It looked like any other Tuesday. But it was not going to be like any other Tuesday. Staff Sergeant Derek Holloway arrived at the motor pool at exactly 0710. He was a big man, broad shoulders, short hair going gray at the temples, and a way of walking that made people step to the side without knowing why. He had been in the Army for 12 years. He had served in 2 different countries, survived difficult postings, and earned his rank the hard way. Nobody doubted that. What some people quietly questioned, though, was his patience. Or rather, his lack of it. Holloway had a way of looking at a new soldier and deciding, almost instantly, what he thought of them. It was a habit he had built up over years, and he believed it served him well. When Private First Class Maya Reyes transferred to his unit 3 weeks earlier, Holloway had taken one look at her and made up his mind. She was small. She was quiet. She kept to herself. In his view, that meant she was either hiding something or wasn't tough enough to last. He had seen soldiers like her before, he told himself. They came and they went. Maya Reyes was 24 years old. She had grown up in San Antonio, Texas, in a small house with a big yard and a father who talked about service the way other fathers talked about baseball, like it was the most important thing in the world, and the most natural. She had joined the Army 2 years earlier, trained in vehicle maintenance, and had already been posted to one base before Fort Bragg. She was good with engines. She was careful and precise. And she was, as several soldiers had already noticed, almost impossible to rattle. She wore her Army jacket every morning, even when the weather warmed up. Nobody thought much of it. Soldiers were allowed their habits. The trouble began with a report. Holloway had reviewed the vehicle maintenance logs that morning, and when he came across Maya's entry for a Humvee fuel line check, something bothered him. The format she used was slightly different from what he was used to seeing. It was not wrong, it was actually the standard format taught at the training facility she had come from, but it was not the format Holloway preferred. And to Holloway, what he preferred and what was correct were, most of the time, the same thing. He found her in the yard, crouched beside the vehicle she had been assigned to inspect, tools laid out beside her in a clean line. Around them, the rest of the unit was going about its morning work. Soldiers moved across the yard, spoke in low voices, passed each other coffee. No one was paying particular attention to the two of them. Not yet. Holloway called her name. She stood, turned, and looked at him calmly. He held up the report. He told her the format was wrong. She replied, respectfully, that she had been trained in this format at her previous posting and that it met the Army's standard requirements. She was not argumentative. She was not disrespectful. She simply explained the facts, the way a good soldier explains facts, clearly and without emotion. Holloway did not want an explanation. He raised his voice. He said the format was unacceptable. He said that in his unit, things were done his way. He said that if she couldn't follow basic instructions, he had to wonder why she was there at all. His voice carried. Soldiers across the yard began to slow down. Some stopped entirely. Heads turned. Maya stood still and listened. Her face did not change. She held his gaze without blinking, without flinching, without any sign that his words were hitting the way he intended them to. That stillness, that quiet confidence, seemed to push him further. He stepped toward her. He reached out and grabbed the front of her jacket by the collar, not violently, but firmly, deliberately, and he said, "Take this off. Show me you even know what a proper uniform looks like." He pulled the jacket open. And then the yard went completely silent. On Maya's left forearm, clearly visible now, was a tattoo. It was detailed and precise, the kind of work that took time, that meant something. At the center was the image of the Medal of Honor, the United States Army's highest award for bravery in the face of danger. Around it was a ring of laurel leaves. Below it, in clean block letters, was a single word, Reyes. Most of the younger soldiers didn't immediately understand what they were looking at. But Sergeant First Class Dominic Prater did. Prater was standing about 15 feet away, holding a clipboard he had forgotten about. He was a 20-year veteran. He had been around long enough to know the significance of that specific design, the medal, the wreath, the family name. That kind of tattoo was not decorative. It was a tribute. It meant that someone named Reyes had earned that medal. And Prater knew exactly who that was. He said the name quietly, almost to himself, but in the silence of the yard it carried farther than he expected. That's Carlos Reyes' daughter. The words moved through the group slowly, and then all at once. A few soldiers looked at each other. A few pulled out phones, not to record, but to search, to confirm what they had just heard. Others simply went still. Master Sergeant Carlos Reyes had served in the United States Army for 16 years. He had been deployed multiple times. He was known, among those who had served alongside him, as the kind of man who never needed to raise his voice because his actions always spoke clearly enough. In 2011, during a military operation in Kunar Province, Afghanistan, his patrol came under sudden and heavy fire from a fortified enemy position on a hillside. 8 soldiers in his squad were pinned down with no cover and no way to retreat. Carlos Reyes, without being ordered to and without hesitation, moved toward the enemy position, drawing the fire toward himself and away from his squad. All 8 soldiers reached safety. Carlos Reyes did not survive. He was 38 years old. He was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor in 2012. The ceremony was held at the White House. His family was there, his wife, his 2 sons, and his daughter, Maya, who was 17 years old at the time and who stood straight-backed and dry-eyed throughout the entire event, the way her father had always taught her to stand when something mattered. Nobody in Maya's new unit had known any of this. She had never mentioned it. She had not introduced herself as a Medal of Honor family member. She had not asked for any recognition or any special consideration. She had simply shown up, signed in, put on her uniform, and gone to work. Back in the yard, Holloway had not yet moved. The color had left his face. He was looking at the tattoo, and then at Maya, and then somewhere past both of them, into a middle distance where, it seemed, the full weight of the last several minutes was catching up with him all at once. 12 years of service had given him many things. A sense of rank. A set of standards. A belief that he could read people quickly and accurately. But in this moment, standing in the motor pool yard with his hand still near the collar of a soldier's jacket, he understood that he had read this particular person completely wrong. She had not come to Fort Bragg carrying her father's name like a shield. She had come carrying it like a private thing, tucked away under a jacket, visible only to herself. She had chosen to serve on her own terms, to earn whatever she earned without the weight of someone else's legend making it easier or harder. She had wanted the uniform to be hers. Only hers. And Holloway had just ripped it open in front of everyone. He took a step back. He lowered his hand. Maya looked at him for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady and clear, the same way it had been when she was simply explaining a report format minutes earlier. My father always said the uniform means the same thing for everyone who earns it, she said. I'm just trying to earn mine. She picked her jacket up from where it had partially slipped off her arm. She folded it neatly over her forearm. Then she turned and walked back to the Humvee she had been working on, picked up her tools, and continued the inspection. The yard was quiet for another few seconds. Then Sergeant Prater removed his patrol cap and held it to his chest. He didn't speak. He didn't look at Holloway. He just stood that way for a moment, quietly, the way a person stands when they want to mark something without making a scene of it. 2 other soldiers nearby did the same. Holloway walked back to his office without a word. A formal report was filed the following day. It was not filed by Maya. It was filed by 3 soldiers who had witnessed what happened and believed it needed to be on record. The review process took several weeks. Holloway was moved to an administrative role while the review was conducted. The result was a formal reprimand placed in his personnel file and mandatory additional training. It was not the end of his career, but it was a mark he would carry. Maya was asked, once, if she wanted to add her own account to the record. She said she had nothing to add. She said what had happened was handled, and she wanted to move forward. Word of the incident spread through Fort Bragg the way most things spread through a military base, in pieces, from person to person, growing in detail with each retelling. But the core of it stayed the same, because the core of it was simple. A young soldier had shown up quietly and done her job. She had never asked anyone to see her a certain way. And then, in a single unexpected moment, everyone had seen exactly who she was. In the weeks that followed, several soldiers sought out the record of Carlos Reyes. They read his official citation. Some found the archived news coverage of the Medal of Honor ceremony. Some watched the footage online, the White House event, the folded flag, the family standing in the front row. One soldier, who had been in the army for only 8 months, read the full account of what Carlos Reyes had done in Quinner Province and then sat quietly in the barracks for a long time afterward, not saying anything to anyone. Maya noticed none of this, or if she did, she gave no sign. She continued working. She passed her next evaluation with the highest marks in the unit. She was promoted to specialist before the year was out. By the following spring, she was being discussed for a leadership track. The soldiers who worked directly with her described her in simple terms: reliable, precise, calm under pressure. The kind of person you wanted beside you when things got difficult. She still wore her jacket most mornings. The tattoo on her left forearm was still there, of course, and sometimes when she was deep in work on an engine, her sleeve would shift and the ink would show. Nobody ever commented on it. Nobody asked her to cover it up, or to explain it, or to talk about her father. That was the way she wanted it. Her father had not served so that his name could open doors for her. He had served because he believed it was the right thing to do. Maya had grown up watching what that belief looked like in a person, how it shaped the way you walked into a room, the way you treated the people around you, the way you handled the moments when nobody was watching. She was trying to live that way too. Not in his shadow. Not on his name. Just in the same direction he had always pointed her, with her own 2 feet on the ground and her own work ahead of her. The jacket stayed on most mornings. And nobody ever grabbed it again.